Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. It is Tuesday, April 28th. My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always. The draft is complete. I got to say, probably day two, for the first maybe hour, everyone started getting drafted, more specifically at the running back position. And I started getting real confused.
Me too.
It's going to be very interesting to see what our opinions are on some of these guys, because I still haven't even solidified some of what I think the running backs are going to do. It was an interesting draft. Took a couple days of dissection. A lot of people wanted to jump right in and give opinions right away. And I'm like, how do people do that? You got to think about it first. You got to give it some thought before you come up with your opinions, because then you'll just be caught with your pants down when you change your opinion, right?
Right.
So welcome to the draft recap episode. We are going to we're going to break down the AFC side first, and then we'll jump to the NFC side, and then we'll do some news to start. We're just going to talk about some, I think, important trades and some minute information. Most of it will be about the draft, so stick with us. How you doing, Rick?
I'm doing good. Much better now that I've got to experience some live sporting event. That definitely felt good.
The NFL is literally beating everyone at everything.
I know.
Like the NBA, MLB, NHL, they're all like, whoa, maybe not the NHL. The NHL would hold hockey if it wasn't bad for PR. But the NFL and the NBA, the NBA and the MLB are like, no, we're not gonna play games until it's safe. We're not gonna do this. And then everyone's like, oh, the NFL is so stupid for holding their draft. Why would they even do that? That's so unsafe. Meanwhile, they're making millions and millions and millions of dollars off people watching their stuff and giving people a break from the coronavirus constant news influx that we have. Everyone got a break. It's brilliant. It's literally brilliant. So all those losers who want the NFL to not play in September, sit down. I need some football in my life. Before we get into the news, check out our website at thefantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter at the FF Champs, on Instagram at the Fantasy Champions. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/The Fantasy Champions. Subscribe wherever you listen: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, and click the bell on YouTube for notifications. Be sure to leave a review. Leave a review. Just go right now and leave a review. I swear. It helps. Share this podcast with your friends, and let's get into some 2 news points. Just 2, right. Rick.
Just 2.
You happy?
Wow. I am. That's awesome. Wow. Who would have thought? Not me.
There was like... There was like 2. There was like maybe 7 or 8, and I was like, it's just not worth it. We might get into some of those points in a later show, but before we jump into all the projected positioning of players and all of that stuff, we just got to talk about what happened this weekend. So that's what we'll spend time on. But so the Texans had engaged in a preliminary discussion with Deshaun Watson on a contract extension. So all those reports about Deshaun getting traded from Houston are hogwash,
dumb,
I guess.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not going to happen. Houston's not going to trade their franchise quarterback.
Right. It would be stupid. So he's obviously staying in Houston. And then the Dolphins. So also, by the way, I just wanted to reference the news is only AFC, NFC related. Does that make sense? So we'll talk about a lot of the NFC news that happened over the weekend on Thursday. But the Dolphins acquired Matt Breida from the 49ers in exchange for number 153 overall in the 2020 NFL draft. I don't know what that turned into.
I don't know what that turned into either.
But anyway, so Matt Breida is now on the Dolphins with Jordan Howard. A lot of people coming into this draft thought that the Dolphins were going to take a running back.
Including myself.
And they did not.
Yeah.
And I thought about it, and I'm like, it makes sense. It does kind of make sense for the system that they run. And, last year, the running back situation was awful. They did sign Jordan Howard and Matt Breida, a very injury-prone running back from the 49ers, had showed signs of success now in Miami. So I think it's not a bad landing spot for either one of those guys. I think we talked about Jordan Howard early in the offseason, but anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't want any piece of the Miami Dolphins running back situation. Just because I know what Jordan Howard looks like in a terrible, terrible system.
Right. I think football-wise, though, it's a decent combination where they can get away with having a Howard and Breida in their backfield. Fantasy-wise, though, yeah, I'm not.
We have somebody in our league that will probably own Breida because that's what happens.
It definitely will.
But that trade went down. Not a lot of other movement in terms of players on the draft weekend, but I think we did have some movement in the NFC.
There was
after the draft. NFC, so we'll talk about that later. Let's jump right into the AFC draft recap episode.
Sure.
We'll start with the quarterback position. Wide receivers, we're going to break it down by Raiders, Broncos, and everyone else. And then for running backs, we'll just talk about some of the biggest additions. Some are going to be way faster than others.
Yeah.
The big debate among the fantasy community is Jonathan Taylor or Edwards-Helaire, which we'll get to later in the show. But let's start with the quarterbacks. I don't want to talk much about what they are as players, more or less their landing spots.
Sure.
We won't talk about Eason. We won't talk about who's the other guy, Jake Fromm, or anybody else that got drafted, Jordan Love, Jalen Hurts. We're not going to talk about any of those guys. We're going to spend most of our time, I believe those other two in the other conference, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to talk about three quarterbacks. Joe Burrow, we'll start off with Bengals, number 1 overall pick, looks so dead when he got drafted.
I know he did not.
I think it's just because how would you react if you knew you were going to get drafted by that team?
I would still try
6 weeks ago.
Pretend to be a little
yuck it up a little bit.
A little bit, like he didn't. I mean, I'm not going to get on him for his reaction, but like he
spent 20 minutes arguing about. He looked like he was sick.
Did you hear him afterwards though? Like he kind of it kind of was a fair explanation. Because he just said he was like relieved to finally just have it over with and hear his name. Yeah,
that's true.
So I mean that makes sense.
Joe Burrow, we talked about on the last show, so we don't need to spend a lot of time on.
We knew he was going to Cincinnati.
We knew he was going to Cincinnati. I talked about how I'm very much willing to use a 14th or 15th round pick in fantasy drafts to acquire him in a redraft setting. Just to note, for anyone who listens for Dynasty, we might talk about a few Dynasty things in this episode, but
sure.
We're basing all of our opinions on redrafts. So anyway, Joe Burrow, I think he's okay in the 14th, 15th round for me. Mm-hmm. I think he's a guy that you like. Last year, I used my 14th and 15th round draft picks to draft guys like freaking Darwin Thompson. So I think for me, like using my 14th, 15th round draft pick
looking for that sleeper,
on Joe Burrow is kind of like a, I think his floor is like 9 or 10, which a lot of people would be like, wow, that's high. But I think his floor is 9 or 10. And I think there's a chance that maybe he jumps up into the top 5 if he ends up being what we think he is in Cincinnati. I mean, he's got weapons. The offensive line is improved.
In year one?
In year one. I think he can jump up in there. But I'm not saying he will. I'm saying he'll probably finish 7 or 8. But I think it's worth the 14th or 15th round selection to go up and snag him, you know what I mean, before everyone else picks him up off the waiver wire and hope he has a breakout season. You know what I mean? Like if he does year one, then that's great. If he doesn't, I'm more interested in his second year. So I don't know how many leagues I will do that in, but I think he's safe as a 14th, 15th round pick. Any higher, you're wasting your time.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I think he's going to get drafted in most leagues though, especially just because it's the first overall pick.
Oh, I know, like Kyler.
And he probably has more hype coming into the NFL than Kyler did. So I could easily see like you're in a redraft league and all of a sudden someone takes him in like the 9th round, which I would suggest not to do.
Right.
I do think he'll be okay though. I mean, we'll talk about what the Bengals did with the offense a little bit later. But they added a piece or two. They still have some great
offensive
weapons there
too, I believe.
Yeah, a little bit later in the draft. The offensive line still could use a little bit of work, but their defense is the biggest problem on that team. But offensively, like they're good. They have a good offense with a good offensive-minded head coach.
I'm trying to temper my excitement on Burrow because I think the most touchdowns thrown by a rookie ever is 27.
Yeah, and I think
was it Baker?
It was Baker, yeah.
So, I can Joe Burrow get to 25? I don't know. I'm thinking like 21 touchdowns, and I'm thinking like between 3,000 to 3,500 yards. But the rushing is what's going to put it over the top for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think one problem is he's going to have to play the Ravens twice and the Steelers twice. And that's 4 games where he's going up against a top 10 defense, top 5 defense, arguably.
That's tough.
Like that is going to be very hard. And even Cleveland has a good defense, I think.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be easy.
So I did see that Joe Burrow, I did see that Joe Burrow, Ian Rappaport, I think, reported this, that Joe Burrow and Andy Dalton are going to be in a QB competition this year. And I was like,
I mean,
please.
That's good. He's not.
Joe Burrow is the starting quarterback.
Right. Andy Dalton is not going to win the job, but make Joe Burrow think that he has a chance
fight for it.
Right. Make Joe Burrow think that Dalton has a chance to win the job.
Because honestly, if I was Joe Burrow, number 1 overall, after fighting all those years in college, you finally get the recognition and you're going into the NFL. For them to say, oh, Andy Dalton, is going to be in a QB competition with Joe Burrow, I'd be like, are you freaking kidding me, guys? Like, we literally spent the last 7-8 weeks implementing a brand new offense for me, and you're going to tell me that we're going to start Andy Dalton.
Yeah, it's just so like it's a nothing easy type league,
I would say he's expected to start week 1, so you're safe if you want to draft him in fantasy. Like, he's going to start week 1.
He'll start week 1.
But I think he's worth that 14th, 15th round pick just to throw at it and hope it sticks. But anyway, Tua Tagovailoa goes at 1.5. Pick number 5 to the Miami Dolphins. I was actually kind of surprised by that. I thought if anybody was going to take him, I had these 2 guys reversed if they both were going to go off the board, which I didn't expect either. But Tua gets taken by the Dolphins. This is a great pick for Miami.
It's a very smart pick.
Very smart pick. Not expected to start week 1 fantasy wise. No. Could he have a situation like Daniel Jones did last year where he didn't start the year and then he comes in, has a couple of really good fantasy weeks, and you don't really know what to do with him. He's not draftable. I think he could do what Daniel Jones did, but I don't see him as a high-end draft capital kind of guy in redraft. So obviously not expected to start week 1. Don't really be throwing your picks at him. I don't even think he's going to be that good for 2 to 3 years in Miami. So it's going to take a little bit of time, but we'll have to see how things go. Like if he comes in, he wins the job over Ryan Fitzmagic and he starts week 1 and he's actually really good, then that whole opinion could change. But I don't think he gets a start until maybe after week 8. And even if he does, I don't think it's going to look that great. And I think it all depends too, not to ramble on, but I think it all depends too on how Miami plays this season. Like, do they actually have the ability to perform at a high level? And are they that much improved like people have been saying? Can they compete with the Bills for the AFC East? I don't know. If they do, then you're having a completely different conversation about Tua starting, because if he's not starting and Ryan Fitzpatrick's actually playing well, then he might not start a game next year. But we'll have to see.
I mean, I know Mel Kiper said after the draft that he wouldn't start Tua a single game next year. There's a lot of people that have that mindset, just like let him sit a year behind Fitzpatrick.
Fitzpatrick doesn't have a lot to offer in terms of teaching, just more or less just like, this is what I've seen in the last 30 years of my NFL career. Even though
it's not that old. Just to see what it takes to be in it. Because, I mean, Fitzpatrick's been around the league. He's been multiple teams.
Yeah.
It's just to let him see, like, the behind the scenes of it. Right. It's good for any young quarterback. And then I think I don't know if that's going to happen, but I don't think Tua is going to start week 1. Definitely not. Like, if Tua plays this year, it's not going to be until probably halfway through the season, or like a Daniel Jones situation, like you said. And sure, he could come in and have a few good weeks, but I don't think he's going to be fantasy relevant for this year.
And then Justin Herbert comes off right after Mr. Tua Tagovailoa. He goes to the Chargers. He's definitely not expected to start week 1. They like Tyrod Taylor. I actually think, so to me, Tua has less of a chance of playing than Justin Herbert, believe it or not. I think Herbert has more of a chance just because they don't have, like, if they went out and got Cam Newton, then there's a 0% chance that Justin Herbert plays. But I think Herbert's not going to overtake Tyrod Taylor. He won't play a game. So all those people that are going to run out and redraft and waste their draft picks on Tua and Justin Herbert, don't waste your time.
They've already said that they're going to start Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah.
That's their plan. Justin Herbert is obviously going to be the starter for the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah, pulling me.
I know.
One for the jar.
But he's going to be the starter, but
yeah.
It's not. I don't think it's going to be week 1.
Okay.
And he'll probably come in the middle of the season as well, just like a Tua situation, but not fantasy worthy.
Yeah.
Definitely not fantasy worthy.
Okay, so last year, obviously, Daniel Jones was drafted. Eli Manning was there. We were like, oh, Daniel Jones is not going to start a game. If you had to choose one of these guys to start a game in 2020, which one would it be?
I think it's going to be Herbert.
Okay.
I think Herbert has a better chance.
I would agree with that. Let's move to the wide receivers. It was an interesting little wide receiver draft class, and we'll talk about some other guys that flipped to the other side on the NFC show. We won't really debate who is right or wrong, and this is not a real NFL draft grade. This is just
right
who is successful in fantasy this year and who isn't, who might have success down the road. We'll talk about it here. So number one off the board, kind of surprising, Henry Ruggs. I think on his current depth chart, you have to put Tyrell Williams 1, and then I would say probably Henry Ruggs on the other side. But I think Ruggs can kind of, he plays a different style than Tyrell Taylor. Wow, I mixed Tyrod and so Tyrell Williams is probably going to be the wide receiver 1. Ruggs will probably be number 2 on the depth chart. But I think he has a real opportunity week 1 to come out and have success. I don't know that, like last year we saw Hollywood Brown on a terrible Ravens wide receiver core. You know what I mean? I'm not ragging on the Ravens offense at all, but the receiver core, there was like Hollywood Brown is like the only receiver in that offense that had any talent. So choking on my own saliva. But
that's nasty.
Yeah, it's disgusting. So Henry Ruggs comes into this Raiders situation. He does have a little bit of competition, but he could have a impact like Hollywood Brown did in the first 2, 3, 4 weeks of the season, or like who's the Redskins wide receiver? Is already losing. I picked him up off the waiver wire. What's his name?
Wait, who?
Redskins wide receiver.
Oh, Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, Terry McLaurin. He could have a week 1 impact like Terry McLaurin, but like I said, wide receivers, we'll just preface this whole segment of wide receivers by saying that the wide receiver position is extremely tough to predict, and it's extremely tough to draft rookies in redraft. I would recommend not even drafting any rookie wide receivers just because they will not give you the production that you're looking for.
Yeah.
A late round flyer on a guy is okay, but if you're out here drafting rookie wide receivers in the 5th round, you're in trouble.
Granted, if a year is going to take place where a rookie wide receiver has a good year, it might be this year.
It might be this year, which is the toughest part of it all.
I don't think it's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be anyone who was taken in the 1st round of the NFL draft, though.
Yeah, I agree.
Like it could be someone random, like a Terry McLaurin was last year, or not random, but like a 2nd round kind of guy,
second or 3rd round,
who's in a good fit with their offense.
Yep.
But for me, like Henry Ruggs, I think he's going to be, like you said, Hollywood Brown 2.0, I think this year. He's going to have, maybe it's week 1 where he goes out and has a monster week and everybody's like, oh, look at this. But then he'll go out 3 straight weeks and have a combined for like 5 catches or 6 catches. Like he's going to be a big play type of guy in that offense, meant to stretch the field. Kind of like a poor man's Tyreek Hill. Maybe one day he'll be Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, right.
But it's not like Derek Carr's Patrick Mahomes either. He's not going to throw 40 touchdowns. He's more of a Teddy Bridgewater type quarterback, which means it's not going to be super explosive. And now they went from having no weapons to a lot of weapons. They obviously drafted 3 wide receivers. They have Darren Waller. They have Tyrell Williams. They have Hunter Renfrow. They have a lot of guys in that offense that the ball is going to get spread around. So I don't see Henry Ruggs being a big fantasy option.
Yeah, I agree.
At least this year.
I think there is the opportunity. You know, you saw fast guys like Mecole Hardman and Hollywood Brown have some boom games. They had some really big production games. And I think for me, you could see Ruggs do that this year. He might have maybe 3-4 weeks where he can be a wide receiver 1 and supplement your team on a week-to-week basis against an easy matchup. But I don't see him being like, if you draft him, don't expect to start him on a regular basis.
No.
You know, that's not what you're going to get. For me, it's tough because Henry, he's so fast and he's so explosive. But the one thing that we always talk about with Tyreek Hill is his inconsistency. And I think that's what you're going to get out of Ruggs career-wise. I think he's not going to be a guy that's going to go out and catch 160, 170 balls like the top 3, top 4 wide receivers in fantasy. I think he's going to be a guy that has a boom game, 1 or 2, every couple games, and it's going to get him into that position of being a top 5 wide receiver. But then you look back on it and you're like, wow, he was a wide receiver 1 8 times and he was a bust 8 more times during the regular season. And so now you got to kind of supplement that with another guy like a more consistent player like a Cooper Kupp or something like that. And so it gets a little bit more difficult with Henry Ruggs. But year one, I definitely, just because of his speed, he's going to get by NFL corners quickly.
He's going to have a big game.
He's going to have a couple big games this year, but outside of that, I don't see him having huge success. Does he finish in the top 25?
Ooh, I think he will. Just because of a few good games that he will have.
Okay.
But it's not going to be that high.
So the Raiders took 2 more wide receivers, which we'll talk about right now. Lynn Bodwin, Brian Edwards. Just to give you some information on Lynn Bodwin, he's another speed guy. He ran a 4.38 unofficial, I think either at a pro day or it's clocked by his staff. So he's fast. Mm-hmm. The Raiders are kind of building a offense trying to similar to the Chiefs where it's all based on speed, which is why they took Ruggs. So Bodwin comes in, or Bowden, I don't know how to say your name, bro, but he comes in and he's another speed guy for them. And then Brian Edwards on the other side, these guys were taken back-to-back 316, 317, comes in. He plays more of a style like Tyrell Williams. So right. I think these guys, obviously to me, 3rd round wide receivers, you still have Hunter Renfrow, you still have Tyrell Williams. You're going to be using Henry Ruggs in that offense. I think you're looking at a 4 or 5 wide receiver 4 or 5 on the depth chart slot for them. Mm-hmm. Just because they don't really have much of that opportunity. I think one of them can ascend into that 3rd wide receiver role, and then as the season goes along, maybe get more opportunity. But these are those rookies that people might draft in like the 15th round, but not really have any success. They're probably going to be guys that aren't going to have success until like 3 or 4 years into their career. Yeah. So it's fantasy wise, I think these 2 guys are interesting, but
dynasty wise interesting, but
for redraft, they're just not great guys. So we'll move on. But is there any thoughts that you had on either one of these guys that you wanted to point out?
No, I think the only thing that I was
just going to move on, and I was going to just completely freak that.
No, it's fine because the only thing I would pretty much say is kind of neither of these guys are going to be that productive, and now there's a ton of wide receivers. They went from having not many wide receivers in that offense
to a lot.
Having two.
It should be.
So they're not going to see a lot of production. But definitely.
I think the next one is the Broncos. So we'll talk, like I said, we're going to talk about these guys in chunks first, and then we'll go through the rest of the wide receivers drafted. But the Broncos are the next team I think they're the last team of wide receivers that we're going to talk about. The Broncos drafted. Now, this is crazy to me. I saw this pick and I was like, okay, this was something that people kind of expected. And then they followed it up in the 2nd round, drafting a wide receiver again. And I talked about it before with the Courtland Sutton love. I think it's still okay to like Courtland Sutton at this point. But the fact that they went out and drafted 2 wide receivers in the top 60 or top 65, I should say, is a little bit concerning. So let's talk about Jeudy first and his effects on the team. He's probably going to be similar to Ruggs, wide receiver 1, more likely wide receiver 2. I think he's better, more talented than Courtland Sutton. I don't know if you want to disagree with that or not.
No, I think I want to see Jeudy play in the NFL, but his potential, I think, is higher than Sutton.
Yeah, I agree. So I think there's a chance Jeudy could become the wide receiver 1 for the Broncos, but he's probably going to slot in at 2 when the season starts. So he's a guy that could probably have a couple of really good games. I kind of see him more of like a Calvin Ridley type player who comes in year one, struggles in the early part of the season, and then
There's a big second half.
Sorry, my timer went off on my computer. So he has a big second half of the year and kind of blows us all away a little bit. I could see that happening. It all depends on Drew Luck.
Yeah.
Or Drew Lock. Yeah. Sorry.
Drew Luck.
I said Drew Luck.
Drew Luck.
Drew Luck.
Drew Luck. Yeah.
Andrew. So anyway, Drew. It depends on Drew Lock's play. And I think Jeudy could have a decent year one, but I don't see him slotting in the top 25, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Which is tough.
It depends how you feel on Drew Lock. And the problem is, and I like Drew Lock, but yeah, you were saying this kind of has an indictment against Cortland. So not quite an indictment, but
like a we need receivers. And you're not.
Yeah, I mean they did though. Like I don't think it's. I disagree with you with the Cortland Sutton thing because I think he was the only wide receiver in that offense.
Right.
They needed other guys as well with Cortland Sutton, so that's why it made sense to draft Jerry Jeudy. And then their second round pick, who we'll get to, but to me that was just like we're taking the best player available. We don't care if he's another wide receiver because it's a great receiver class, which again makes sense.
I don't think it's really an indictment on him. I just think it's more or less like we needed receivers, we have receivers, and like to me it's all about value of where you take players, especially at the running back position, but even at the wide receiver position, it's like how much does a guy, like if you draft a guy in this, in the 4th, 5th, 6th round, you're not really expecting them to walk in and be day one players. But if you're drafting wide receivers in the 1st or 2nd round, you're kind of expecting them to come in and at least do some sort of, production for your team week one. And so whether you're on the field starting or not, if you were a top 65 pick, you're in there. And so I think for the Broncos, they're it is a situation where, it's not like they drafted a wide receiver in the 5th, 6th round who's going to get 10 targets all year. Like Judy's probably going to get a large percentage of the target share, not so large that it's going to make him a top 25 wide receiver. But I just don't see, like I said, I don't see Jeudy having a huge impact, but I think it's going to take work away from Cortland Sutton, which is a little bit disconcerting when you're talking about drafting Cortland Sutton. So for Jeudy, I would just altogether stay away from him as a player. And for Cortland Sutton,
he's going to get drafted.
He is going to get drafted. But for Cortland Sutton, I would be kind of nervous. The second guy, KJ Hamler, we'll just throw him in this discussion real quick.
Sure.
He was drafted 214, round 2, pick 14. So it is, like I said, concerning to the rest of the wide receiver core. I was kind of excited about Deshaun Hamilton a little bit for the Broncos, and that kind of goes out the window. I don't really know too much about Hamler. I just know the fact that he's probably going to be finishing as a 3 or 4 on the roster.
Yeah. He was a solid wide receiver prospect. And again, I understand that the idea for Denver. To go wide receivers back to back, I don't think it was a need for them to draft a wide receiver. Right. To go in their 1st and 2nd round, I think was a little much for Denver. But I actually think Jerry Jeudy could finish in the top 25. I think he's kind of in the same boat fantasy-wise as Henry Ruggs, where he's going to have those big week, bad week.
Is he fast?
Not quite. Jerry Jeudy?
No, KJ Hamler.
Oh, I don't know. I hold on.
Let me take.
I get him mixed up with the other guy.
That's all right. I'll take a look. Finish your thought.
KJ Hamler is So he's like an explosive guy. He's 5'9", 176. He played at Penn State. He's kind of like he'll probably have some punt returns as well, but he's explosive. Okay. So he's going to fill a certain role for Denver, and then Jerry Jeudy, like I said, could finish in the top 25. Yeah. But I don't see him finishing much higher. It all depends how you feel about Drew Lock, because if Drew Lock comes in year 2 and has a big jump and is what some people in Denver think he's going to be, then Cortland Sutton could very well still have a good year, and Jerry Jeudy will finish in the top 25, and KJ Hamler will have a good career. But it all depends on Drew Lock and how you feel on him too.
Right. So let's move forward with the wide receivers. T. Higgins, Bengals wide receiver drafted in the with the 33rd pick in the entire draft.
First pick of the second round. I think the Bengals wanted to snag a wide receiver. Unfortunately, he probably will be the wide receiver 3. I do really like T. Higgins. Maybe
to be honest
4.
with you. He might be 4 because there are guys and there's people. When I was watching the draft, ESPN, who I gotta say did a not so great job of broadcasting that event. If we're gonna be honest, I'd rather watch.
You're an NFL Network kind of guy.
I am an NFL Network guy, but they did I can't remember what it was. It was like a draft-a-thon like Zoom call for NFL Network on their website.
Oh yeah,
and I watched some of it, and I was like, dude, this. That was great. Yeah, I was like that. I would much rather watch that than Booger McFarland talk about T. Higgins. But anyway, so they were talking about how the Bengals need wide receivers, and I'm like, what are you talking about?
No, they don't.
They need a wide receiver, one for the future, because you can't rely on AJ Green for the rest of your life. But like, AJ Green is still good. You still have Tyler Boyd. You still have John Ross. And now you're drafting T. Higgins and throwing him in there. Yeah, wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4 on the depth chart is probably where he's going to be. T. Higgins will not be he has a rookie quarterback. He's not going to start week 1, and he's going to be lower on the depth chart than people think. I like T. Higgins. I think he's a really great player.
I love T. Higgins.
And I think in a couple years when Joe Burrow is insanely good, I think T. Higgins could be a really great receiver, but year 1, man, he's a dynasty investment with no redraft value.
So that's the thing. He doesn't have. I agree. I don't think he has a lot of redraft value. And I love T. Higgins. I loved him before the draft. He's a big guy. Can go up there in a one-on-one situation. He'll like the fade. He's kind of like they were talking about. He's going to be AJ Green's replacement, which again. The Bengals would need a wide receiver, but I felt like it wasn't a need this year.
Yeah, I think they just wanted to get one in this class.
Second round. Yeah, and again, I get the line of thinking because I think T. Higgins in any other draft would have been a first round pick. He's a big guy, but
he's pretty friggin' close.
Right, he essentially was a first round pick.
There are reports, just to give you all the facts. There are reports that he might start week 1. I don't believe them for a second, but they might slot him on the other side next to AJ
Tyler
Green.
Boyd? Oh, AJ Green, okay.
But I think people are just forgetting. When the second you come out of a draft, everyone's like super hyped on players, and it's just like, just relax.
He's just gonna get involved, and he's gonna have. But I think
a month from now, people are gonna forget Teagan's name.
Yeah, he'll be once AJ Green is out of town, which could be
next
sooner
year
rather than later.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's when you'll see T. Higgins really shine. Mm-hmm. But as of right now, he's going to be like the 3rd or 4th option on that team. And he's not going to have a major success for year 1.
Yeah. So let's move on to the next guy, Michael Pittman for the Colts. Mm-hmm. For the Colts, you still have, what's his name? The guy who always escapes.
T.Y. Hilton.
T.Y. Hilton's still there. They don't have any other wide receivers. So you could definitely see Michael Pittman being drafted by the Colts as the 2nd, maybe the 3rd wide receiver on the depth chart. I don't think, like I said, he has really. It depends on the role that he plays, to be honest with you. And I want to check that out right now.
So who was the guy that the Colts drafted last year, though?
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about. I'm pulling up the wide receiver depth chart right now. Paris Campbell. He was I believe a 4th, 5th round draft pick. I believe he was a 2nd round pick. I'm sorry. So you have 2 2nd round picks here: Paris Campbell and Michael Pittman. They do like to run wide receiver sets 52% of the time. So all three of these guys will probably hit the field. Right now, he's slotted, projected by Player Profiler as the number 2 wide receiver on the roster. So I think you could see him 1, 2, or 3 is probably safe to say. I think you could slot him in for a top 50 finish in fantasy football next year. Just because of where Michael Pittman, just because of where he is on the roster. But I don't know, they don't really have, they drafted Jacob Eason, I believe. Is that the guy they drafted?
In the 4th round.
They don't really have a major long-term plan after Phillip Rivers. Mm-hmm. They just got him, so I don't think they would have a massive plan left. But for me, when you look at Michael Pittman, I don't know down the road how much great fantasy success he's going to have. How old is T.Y. Hilton?
He's actually getting old. I think he was like 30 with injury history.
He is 30 and a half years old.
So yeah, he's 30.
So yeah, you kind of get into this position right now where I'm trying to remember. Did Pittman play the slot in college?
No, I think he's
an outside receiver. Okay, yeah. So that's basically it's T.Y.'s replacement at this point.
Yeah, I think Paris Campbell and Michael Pittman are like the next group of guys for the Colts at the wide receiver position. But again, I don't actually, for year one, I don't like Michael Pittman at all. And I know the situation's not bad. And he very well could be the number 2 wide receiver in the offense behind T.Y. Hilton.
That's why I say top 50 finish.
Yeah, and I do agree. Like I think he'll finish top 50.
It'll be like 48, but he'll make it.
Yeah. The thing is, Philip, like you look at Keenan Allen and Mike Williams,
right?
And last year, and they both. I mean, Keenan Allen was solid, but he wasn't as good as people thought. Philip Rivers I don't think at this point in his career is going to put up the numbers that will help a wide receiver put up his numbers.
Right.
So I don't think Michael Pittman's going to do a lot in year one, and then we're gonna see who the Colts quarterback is for his future.
We are going to speed this up a little bit. Let's talk about Lavista Chennault. He was drafted round 2, pick 10 by the Jacksonville Jaguars. Going to be number 2 or 3 on the depth chart, which I
like this pick.
I think it's a good pick. I think the big concern for me, more specifically, Jacksonville. I like this pick for Gardner. Gardner escaped this draft without another quarterback on the roster. So this is his squad unless they go out and get Cam Newton. A lot of people
think they will.
A lot of people thought that they were going to get a quarterback. Some people think they're going to trade for a quarterback, and I'm like, why? Everything doesn't point to that. Like, they didn't draft a quarterback. They traded away Nick Foles. If they didn't believe in Gardner Minshew, they wouldn't have traded away Nick Foles. Like, why trade away Nick Foles and then go sign Cam Newton? Doesn't make any sense. Anyway, Gardner Minshew is going to start week 1. He has Leonard Fournette. He has a slightly improved offensive line. He has DJ Chark, D.D. Westbrook, and Lavista Chennault now as wide receivers on his team. The Jaguars usually do 3 wide receiver sets 61% of the time, and Lavista Chennault is going to probably be the second or third guy, so he's going to be on the field. I like him finishing in the top 40 probably in fantasy football next year.
I think Chennault will finish higher than Pittman. I don't think he's going to be anything that's worthy of
fantasy football draft starting and drafting. Still, I agree.
Especially because there's 2 wide receivers probably ahead of him on the depth chart, and Gardner Minshew is. I like Gardner Minshew, but I don't think he's going to throw 40 touchdowns. So, but he's gonna help the offense. He can play in the slot. He can play in the outside.
Yeah.
They use him in like wildcat situations too. Like he's a very versatile wide receiver.
Right.
And he's something that Jacksonville needed, which was just like another playmaker.
Right.
So I like the pick. I like the player. I like the situation, but he's still not going to do anything fantasy wise, at least year 1.
Yeah, I agree. Let's move to Chase Claypool, wide receiver 3 or 4, no redraft value whatsoever. I think it's an interesting pick, though, for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It kind of makes me nervous a little bit for Deontay Johnson, and I was really looking forward to what we were going to see out of Deontay Johnson next year, and then they made this draft pick, and I was like, what are you doing? Like, why are you drafting a wide receiver? Like, that's one thing you do not need, and you go out and you draft a wide receiver. So you still have James Washington, you still have Deontay Johnson, and now you got Chase Claypool. I thought at first, because Claypool's people have said that he's big enough to be a tight end.
He can play tight end,
and
he's huge,
and that he would just go to tight end because right now, they don't really have a tight end on the roster besides Eric Ebron. Or they have Vance McDonald still, but he's old as dirt and not very good anymore. So I thought Claypool would slide into that, but they're saying that Claypool is going to play wide receiver.
He's probably going to play the outside.
Yeah, he's probably going to play the outside, which is what Deontay Johnson was doing. So I'm just confused as to what the future looks like for the wide receiver core for the Steelers. Player Profiler had Chase Claypool as the 4th guy on the roster. If he is 3 or 4, redraft, he's going to be nowhere near being good for your fantasy team. So people might look at him and go, "Hey, I'm going to draft him." No, don't do that. Don't do that.
Right.
No, he could. I see him as a player that may have the ability, because James Washington has had his opportunity at this point. I like him a lot, but he's blown every single opportunity he's had. So I see Chase Claypool being a guy that could ascend from 3 to 4 to 2 to 3.
I could very well see him.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I could very well see him being as the number 2 receiver in that offense by the end of the year.
Yeah, I agree.
We're going into next year.
But I don't see much fantasy. He might be a guy that you could see starting to put up fantasy production in the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season. That could be something that happens. But as far as the first half of the season or any relevant, the biggest thing is you don't want to pick up a wide receiver and then rely on him going into the, postseason for your fantasy leagues. So you have your rookie wide receiver leading you to your fantasy championship. When has that happened ever?
No.
So let's talk about the next one. The Jets got a man's, dude.
Oh, love it.
Your team, Denzel Mims. They waited and waited and waited. And I'm like, what are the Jets doing?
They traded back.
They got some offensive linemen in the first round, I believe. Yes. No, maybe.
Yeah, they drafted the guy from Louisville, the big guy.
Yep. Okay, yeah. So smart move for them. 100%. To be honest with you, any draft you can find a talented wide receiver, offensive lineman. If there's a talented guy and you're a top 12 pick, you take the offensive lineman.
Some people thought he was the best offensive lineman in this draft.
So the Jets got a steal, building that offensive lineup, making that improvement. Right now, Denzel Mims is the projected third wide receiver on the roster. He ran a 4.38. He has a speed score in the 96th percentile. He's a burst score in the 90th percentile. He has a catch radius in the 96th percentile. I don't know why this guy didn't go higher. He was projected to go
where the Bengals took T. Higgins. He was projected to go top of the second or late first.
He's big.
And he fell.
This guy is very, very intriguing. He's 6'3", 207 pounds, and he runs up 4.38.
Yeah, he's a physical freak.
Insane.
The only
I love it. Good job, Jets.
Colin Cowherd didn't like this pick because he doesn't like his hands.
Please.
So that is the only concern, is his inconsistency, I think.
Yeah, right.
But if he can figure that out, he could be the steal of this draft. I mean,
yeah.
And what I love about Denzel Mims too is the situation and fit. The Jets desperately needed a wide receiver.
He might be the one. He might be the one week one.
I mean, I think it's Jamison Crowder is going to be.
I would agree with that. But Jamison Crowder plays in the slot.
He does, yeah. So he's going to be the starting outside guy. So, it has Rashard Perriman, who the Jets signed to a 1-year deal, which I like that deal as well.
Yep.
So but other than those two guys, other than Crowder and Perriman, Mims is going to be the guy. So at worst, he's the third wide receiver on that team.
Agreed.
And I think by the end of the year, he might be the first or second guy.
Yeah, I agree. Where do you think he finishes?
I'd say top 35.
Yeah, I was going to say top 30. So we're close on that. Still undraftable and redraft, folks.
Right, still undraftable. Yeah.
He might have some weeks where you can
ahead of fantasy-wise.
We've been thinking and teasing the reality of streaming wide receivers. Possibly. I'm going to try it this year, see what happens. But Denzel Mims could have some weeks against good matchups. If he's facing a bad corner, he could probably have a big game, and I see that happening. But he's a guy late in the second round that a lot of people aren't going to think about. They're going to be like, he's a late second round pick, early third, somewhere in that region. And he could have one of those, like Terry McLaurin. He could have one of those big starts to the season because there's no one there besides Jamison Crowder and Rashad Perriman. But Rashad Perriman wasn't really that great for the Bucs.
Rashad Perriman is just so inconsistent.
Let's talk about the last wide receiver drafted in round 3, pick 28, Devon Duverney to the Baltimore Ravens, projected as the 4th or 5th wide receiver down the roster. He fits their system. That's about it for me.
He's a solid receiver.
They wanted to add some offensive pieces, and we'll talk about the other one they added in a second.
Will we?
But I think, I don't know. I mean, Willie Snead really ain't that great, and Miles Boykin had an opportunity. He was drafted in the same draft as Marquise Brown. So I think with this set of wide receivers, Marquise Brown actually kind of probably made it out of this draft okay. And he could have a big year one, but they have a round 1 and a round 2 wide receiver on their team. So they're bulking. And in 2 years, these wide receivers are going to be really good. Right now, you look at their wide receivers and you're like, wow, they're not great. But I don't think that Devon Duvernay finishes in the top 50. He might get close, but there's not going to be a lot of opportunity for him.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The Ravens are bulking up, though. Holy cow.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about some running backs. The 4th round running backs are probably going to be a lot faster. And we got some interesting picks. Man, the 2nd round was filled with surprising picks. I could do a whole show on running backs.
Yeah.
So it started off with the Chiefs doing what they needed to do last year and didn't do. And that's draft a running back. They were, I think it was the 28th ranked team when it came to running the football last year. They didn't have a running back that finished with 1,000 rushing yards. And I like Damian Williams going into this year, but what did I tell you? Damian Williams is in my top 12. And if they drafted a running back, whoever that was going to replace him. So now Clyde Edwards-Helaire, drafted as the 32nd pick in the 1st round, is in my top 12.
Oh, wow.
So
see, I would. Oh, wow.
There's so many people against Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Which is, I don't.
Bro, do you remember David Montgomery last year?
Yeah.
Do you remember how hyped I was on David Montgomery?
Yep.
This guy is literally David Montgomery, but going to a good offense.
Well,
I'm getting even more sweaty.
Clyde Edwards, his player comp is Austin Eckler, which fantasy wise,
that's strange comp.
Well, he's like 5'7". He's kind of tinier. He's very
it makes sense.
Elusive, and he's a pass catching back.
Well, so he's not really fast. He's just
very elusive. Though.
He ran a 4.6. Now, okay, do you want to hear something?
Oh, that's actually slower than I thought.
Or did you want to talk about Clyde Edwards-Helaire a little bit more?
I think it's the absolute perfect fit. And he's going to be the best running back in this draft.
Now,
and it's not because he is the best running back in the draft, but he's the best fit.
Do you want to know? So I did have to temper my excitement a little bit because I was getting a little hyped up for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Okay. I probably still am. But
sounds like
the Chiefs love to run it in the red zone, and that's why. Like I could see him getting 15 plus touchdowns next year, and that's not even like total. That's to me low end. Like and people will be like, "Oh, you can't say that." And
15 low end.
Yeah, dude. I don't know.
That's I think extreme.
It might be extreme, but if he ends up being like they're calling him Brian Westbrook, like that came from the mouth of Andy Reid.
He's
Mahomes.
This was his guy.
Did you hear this story?
Yes, I did.
So like they called up Mahomes and said, "Who do you want?" He said Clyde, and I'm just like, Mahomes wants him, the GM wants him, Andy Reid wants him. There's no way he doesn't start and get 3 downs.
Even if he splits with Damian Williams, I think he's going to be fantasy wise, huge value. Now, especially in a PPR half PPR league, because he's going to get receptions, he's going to get receiving yards, and he's going to get receiving touchdowns.
If you go on playerprofiler.com and you look out workout metrics, speed, height, all that stuff. I don't know if height really matches, but Kareem Hunt did actually match up pretty closely to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Fits their offense very much.
He's a smaller.
What he reminds me of is Frank Gore, and that doesn't sound like a good comp. And it sounds like a really old, slow running back.
A prime Frank Gore.
Now, for fantasy, prime Frank Gore was not a top 3 running back. I think there's maybe 1 to 2 seasons where Clyde Edwards-Helaire ends up being a top 3 running back, maybe, in his whole career. I think he's more of a guy that finishes around 7 or 8, which is why I'll probably rank him at 12, maybe 13. But for people who are like, oh, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, man, he's not going to be good. Don't do him in redraft. Just unfollow all of those Twitter people that you followed that say that about Clyde Edwards-Helaire right now, because a running back with the talent. He was probably the 4th best running back in this class. projected to be a second-round pick, a running back with this talent on a team who has a very good offense.
It's all about
who believes in him.
He's going to get used.
People are so stupid. They like Josh Jacobs better than this guy last year. And I'm like, you just have to draft Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You know what I mean? Like, I'm okay with him. I'm okay with him late second round. Like, that's...
Wow.
I look at him and like, if he's a complete bust, then I will be sitting down and eating my pants and crying because I lost my fantasy league. I don't know if I will do it, but I'm surprised by the amount of people who don't like Clyde Edwards-Helaire for fantasy.
I would
next year.
I think second round is a little early. But I would definitely take him in the third round.
Yeah, you got to temper me down a little bit.
If Damian, if he was the only guy in the backfield, I know.
I've been waiting.
I think
Kareem Hunt ruined my fantasy season 2 years ago. I'm ready for Clyde. Yeah. Continue. Sorry.
If they split, he's going to be good, but he's not going to be second round good. Like Damian Williams is still in that offense, and they're still going to use him a little bit.
This was my other thing that I was going to say too. Not to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
But I actually think, to the Damian Williams point, I think he's going to be. I think he will be cut before the season starts.
So if that happens,
he's on the bubble.
I'm 100% with you.
I'm saying this in late April. So if this happens,
if that happens, then Clyde Edwards is like.
Oh yeah, he's skyrockets.
Yeah, he's
skyrockets.
a second round pick definitely at that point.
I do agree with you. I think they are going to use Damian Williams, and so I think that's why there should be a little bit of tempered excitement when it comes to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but they obviously like him.
No, that's the thing. They obviously like him, and he's in an offense that puts up big numbers, and he's playing with Patrick Mahomes as the starting running back, and he catches out of the backfield at an elite level, and the Chiefs love using screens with running backs. Like, it's a perfect fit. Yeah.
Let's talk about Jonathan Taylor going to the Colts. This is where it starts getting weird, folks. Now, I just want to lay it straight with the Dynasty folks. 130, Clyde Edwards, basically right now you have to say the 101 in Dynasty drafts is Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and the 102 is Jonathan Taylor. I think it depends on situation. If you want to draft, for the future, Jonathan Taylor is probably the guy. If you want to draft to win now and you have pick 101 somehow, you go with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think Jonathan Taylor, his landing spot is good. People are excited about Jonathan Taylor. I love Jonathan Taylor. I said Jonathan Taylor is my favorite back in this class, and he still is. In his landing spot, like I said, fantastic.
Yeah.
Good offensive line. You have a good quarterback. I think it could be a great landing spot for him. Here's the problem. What do they do with Marlon Mack? What do they do with Nyheim Hines? There is some big problems there. People are super excited about Jonathan Taylor, but you can't just look at Marlon Mack and say, screw you, a guy who got 1,000 yards rushing last year in 14 games.
So that's the problem. I think, if Marlon Mack wasn't there, this would be a completely different situation.
Oh my gosh, I know. I'd have my pants off about Jonathan.
He would be either on the same level with Edwards-Helaire, or he would be ahead of him. The problem is Marlon Mack is on that team, and they're probably going to use all three running backs, which is brutal fantasy wise.
Yeah.
I think Jonathan Taylor will still be good, though, and he's going to have his moments. And Marlon Mack has an injury history as well. So, if he gets injured, then
I think that's why Jonathan Taylor is a decent 6th or 7th round pick in fantasy.
Yeah,
it's very intriguing.
Really interesting where he ends up in drafts. If people are taking Jonathan Taylor in the 5th or 4th round, I'm not too comfortable with that.
Yeah, it's more uncomfortable.
But if he's more like a 7th round pick, I would definitely take him.
I would close my eyes and cover my nose in the 5th round.
Yeah,
and just do it. But a 6th round, 7th round are probably I would be way more comfortable there. Unfortunately, I think he'll probably end up in the 4th round.
I think so too. He's gonna be
we'll have to see. I do want to say next Tuesday we're doing a mock draft, folks.
Oh shoot!
So we'll get to see all this in live action.
Our first mock draft.
Yeah.
Dang, already.
I know. So anyway, Jonathan Taylor, I agree with you. Great landing spot. Here's the big thing. I think this is we're going to let Marlon Mack go next year. We want our guy. Jonathan Taylor is our guy. We don't have to pay him a lot of money like we would Marlon Mack, so let's just go with that guy. But here's the problem. You end up with one whole season of Jonathan Taylor not being good for fantasy football.
Yeah.
And that's why I say if you're in dynasty leagues and you're taking a long-term running back selection, I would go with Jonathan Taylor over Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But if
Didn't Taylor have a lot of college reps though?
Yeah.
Was he? Yeah. So that would be concerning dynasty wise.
Yeah. Very concerning.
But if they don't use him a lot in year one, I think that would kind of counter it.
Right.
So yeah, maybe.
But anyway, it's a good landing spot for him. But I think the Jonathan Taylor excitement needs to be tempered a little bit because I don't know how much opportunity he really will get in this system. He's not really known for being a prolific pass catching back, which is why Clyde Edwards-Helaire went as the number one running back off the board. But it is interesting to see. Let's talk about J.K. Dobbins. Similar situation to Jonathan Taylor. You have Mark Ingram there. This is more of an indictment on the Gus bus than it is on Jonathan Taylor. I mean, on Mark Ingram, I should say.
Yeah.
Good pick for the Ravens. I think
loved this pick.
I love this pick for the Ravens. Man, short term, I want to like it so bad, and I want him to be a success so bad. Like Alvin Kamara came in and stole Mark Ingram's job. I want that to be the case with Dobbins. But Mark Ingram was good last year, and he's still 30. He's 31, 30 years old.
He's like 30, 31, yeah, in that range.
So I think Dobbins has that opportunity to be a number one running back. But here's another. I don't know how long they signed Mark Ingram for, but here's another guy where you're going to have to wait a year. And maybe see what happens. But I think he could have some good fantasy value this year just because of the way the Ravens run their system.
Yeah, the way they run their system is why I think Dobbins is going to have a good year.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's going to be better than Taylor, though, or Clyde.
Yeah.
But I love this pick, especially long-term. So he would be the guy, like, dynasty-wise, I might take number one because I think in a year or two, when Ingram is either gone or at that point I think Dobbins will take over.
Yeah.
The way the Ravens run their system, he's going to be an absolute monster fantasy-wise, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's a great fit for him. I think it's a great fit for the Ravens. It's a great draft pick. And Ingram this year is going to mentor him. He's 30 years old.
Yeah.
And then I think in year two, it's going to be a real Dobbins show. But for this year, I don't know if he's how good fantasy-wise.
I think he could be a low-end RB2.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah.
And I think there is a chance, don't quote me on this, but I think there is a chance that he just blows up and you have a Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara kind of split and that situation happens. I really do think that might happen.
I absolutely can see that.
The amount that the Ravens run the football, yes, sir. And
that's not going to change. Like the amount, like with Lamar Jackson, he's their franchise quarterback. And I don't know how long he's going to last because he's the type of quarterback that relies on running the football and those like quarterbacks are great for like a 10-year period.
Yeah.
But for at least the next like 10 years, like that's going to be their offense. They're going to run the ball a lot.
Yep.
And that's going to be perfect for J.K. Dobbins.
Agree. Number 322, round 3, pick 22, the most depressing pick of the entire draft.
For me.
Shove a knife straight through our heart.
Yeah.
Zach Moss to the Buffalo Bills.
Frank Gore 2.0.
Frank Gore, young Frank Gore. So now you have Devin Singletary and Zach Moss on the same roster.
No, see, Clyde Edwards is young Frank Gore. Zach Moss is old Frank Gore.
Yeah, that's so true. He's slow as molasses. Some had him as the second best running back in this class. I don't agree with that, but regardless of the situation, third round value on Zach Moss is good.
Sure, yeah.
They're going to split reps. That's inevitable. This kills Devin Singletary's value.
So
go ahead.
Definitely does. However, are they going to split reps?
Yes, I agree.
I said, are they? That's a question.
Yes, I think they are.
So
I'll rephrase my answer. Either way, I agree with myself.
Not the first or the last time that'll happen.
No.
I think I don't know. If you're right and they split reps, I'm going to cry.
Zach Moss is going to be the bruiser.
Yeah.
And I see some would say third downs for Zach Moss.
Yeah.
I would say it'll probably be Devin Singletary down 1 and 2, and then Zach Moss down 3 and 4.
What if it's a 70-30 split and it's Singletary, the 70? Because I think he'll still be.
Oh, I mean, I would be all over Devin Singletary if he had a 70% snap share. But
you think it's gonna be like?
I think
50,
it's gonna be 55-45 or 60-40 in that range.
If it's 60-40, I would still be okay with Singletary. It still hurts me because
it just makes him a mid-range RB2 as opposed to a high end.
If it's 60-40, it's pretty much the same he was at the end of last year, which is just an RB2.
Yeah. So, but Zach Moss, I think he's probably in the 30s is what my guess would be in terms of production.
Yeah, I don't love Zach Moss fantasy wise.
He slows. The biggest thing about Zach Moss
gonna
is
get touchdowns.
He's going to pound it in. Exactly. He's going to score. He might score 10 touchdowns next year just because how the Bills like to use Frank Gore in the red zone. I don't, like I said, fantasy value. He might even jump up higher than that. I don't know. I don't get it. I really don't get it.
No, I mean, I understand that to draft a running back.
It just doesn't make sense for their system. The way they played football last year, why? Why do you need a really slow running back? What's the purpose of that?
I think they could have been fine in the 5th round or 4th or 5th round drafting a speedier third down type of back.
Rick, this is why the Bills are going to suck next year. These picks. They don't make any sense. It's like the Bills spent all those years watching the Bill Belichick do ridiculous things, and they're like, we can do that too.
Right. Yeah.
No, stop that.
No, I don't like this pick.
Interesting selection here too. Makes sense. This you might not agree with this, but this is a indictment on the starting running back, not for the reasons you're thinking. I'm gonna say. 329 was Darrington. Don't know how to say your name, bro. Evans.
Darrington, yeah.
He's a good running back, talented, not extremely elite, not top of this class, but he's good. I think the Titans are doing this because the NFL is a league where you don't overpay running backs. Yep. And I think they're going to ride out the franchise tag on Derrick Henry. They're going to let him walk, and then they're going to move to this guy next year.
So that would be actually a smart move for the Titans. But for year one, this isn't really. He's not going to do much.
Evans is not going to do much.
Yeah, and I think this could also mean Deion Lewis might get cut.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised about that. Deion Lewis is kind of an old man.
You know who will sign him?
Who? Patriots?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, we probably would. I think we would.
2 years from now, I actually, for dynasty purposes, the amount the Titans do like to run the football, I think this guy is actually a relatively sneaky pick if you're in a dynasty league.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But I think if they keep Derrick Henry, I think it's just another, Deion Lewis type player. But I think they see, I think the Titans see the trend in the NFL. And the value of a guy like Derrick Henry is not there. And I see the biggest ever, as much as everyone loves Derrick Henry, what does every team in the NFL want that want to go with a workhorse running back? They want a guy that can catch the ball as well. Yeah. And that's their biggest problem right now is that Derrick Henry just can't do that. So Darrington Evans can kind of, you're going to make the argument that he can, but he caught 7 balls last year. Maybe 10 max.
It's not what he's known for, but I mean, he's not
he can do it. It's just, he's not, he has one route in his route tree and it's sideways. So
that is true. That is very true.
I don't this is the thing with me and people who talk about pass catching running backs. They're like, some running backs just straight up don't have good hands. I don't think Derrick Henry has bad hands. He just doesn't know how to run routes. That's his biggest problem. But anyway, do you have any more thoughts on Evans, or do you want to move on?
No, we can move on.
We have 3 more guys, so just hold on with us for 3 more guys. 4.6 round 4. Joshua Kelly goes to the Chargers. I actually think he could probably be the number 2 back on the roster behind Eckler. I like this pick for the Chargers. Yeah. This could be one of those sneaky Joshua Kelly jumps up ahead of some guys and ends up being a better running back than we thought kind of picks. I think he gets a lot more opportunity than we think he's going to. But we'll have to see how it kind of breaks down for Kelly. He's not a fantastic talent, but he's good enough to kind of take over a role. And I'm not saying he's going to be the next Melvin Gordon, but I don't think they want to have Eckler out there based on his size and his, he's a quick back that's super short. He's not going to hold up for 300 reps like they gave Melvin Gordon. You know what I mean? So I think they want to bring in a guy that they know is going to be that. And I don't know if Joshua Kelly's that guy or the other guy that they have on the roster. Don't know what his name is. Forgot it already. He's probably going to end up the third guy on the roster.
I know. Yeah. I know who you're talking about.
Anyway, I see Kelly kind of coming in and maybe taking a lot of those reps. We'll see how they utilize him. I think he's worth one of those 14th, 13th round draft selections if you want to take a flyer.
Really?
Yeah. I think he might be worth that, but if he's just going completely undrafted, I would let him sit, wait, and waiver wire him as soon as week 1 happens, and he gets more reps than people think. Yeah. So I don't know if you had any thoughts on Joshua Kelly.
No, I kind of agree with you. I don't think Eckler is a workhorse type of running back, so they're going to use him like that for a while. But I don't think that's going to be a long-term thing, and I think Joshua Kelly, I don't know if he will.
Yeah, no, that's kind of where I'm at. But,
But he definitely has the potential, and the landing spot is good enough where
I think Joshua Kelly has more opportunity than Darwin Thompson did last year.
Yes,
when I drafted him in the 14th, 15th round.
Definitely.
So
I would agree with you on that.
I like that. And then LaMichael Perrin drafted round 4, pick 14. I didn't put the team name down. Hold on, let me grab the team name. I don't even know who picked him.
Was that the Steelers? Or no, the Steelers.
The Jets. The Jets.
Oh,
took him.
Right.
Yeah. So this guy's going to get no opportunity.
So I actually sort of disagree with you on that.
Interesting. I don't think he's going to get any opportunity. They didn't give what's his name? Le'Veon Bell 300 reps. But what's with the lays and the laws here for the Jets? Can you just leave that alone? LaMichael Perrin and Le'Veon Bell. Well, anyway, yeah. So I mean,
the reason.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say the reason I think he's similar to Joshua Kelly, where I don't know if he will, but Adam Gase doesn't like Le'Veon Bell, and he's getting old. They don't have another running back on that roster. He's gonna be the number 2 guy. And if Le'Veon Bell struggles, I could see him getting more work as the season goes on.
Yeah.
It's not something that I think will definitely happen, but it's someone who I could keep your eye out and being like, he could, a sleeper wise, could have some opportunity.
I don't know. He could, but it's not going to be enough to do something for fantasy wise.
Probably not, unless Bell gets injured.
Right. But they even still have that other guy there. I'm having a tough day with names here. I got to have every single name in front of me just to have an interesting day. They have Josh Adams. Yeah, I think LaMichael Perrin is probably going to be he's going to be the number 2 guy. That would be safe to say, but he's not going to pass Le'Veon unless they trade him.
No, he's not going to pass Le'Veon unless they trade him.
Pittsburgh's still in the conversations, bro.
I mean, not after their pick of Anthony McFarland.
Oh, the transition. Round 4, pick 18, Anthony McFarland to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Waited all draft for the Pittsburgh Steelers to draft a running back like they said they were going to do, and they just stabbed my back until the 4th round.
I think that shows that they like James Conner.
They do. 4th round is like kind of middle of the pack in terms of value. So I don't see him as like he's not 5th, 6th, and 7th where he's not going to get an opportunity, but he's certainly not for a 2nd, 3rd where he has to have the opportunity. Yeah. They drafted a running back last year in round 3, I believe. No, they drafted a running back in round 4, Benny Snell.
Who was not good.
Not very good. And they still have Jalen Samuels. So you have James Conner, Benny Snell, Jalen Samuels, and Anthony McFarland. If
one of those guys is getting cut.
Probably Jalen Samuels would be my guess. I think Anthony McFarland could jump Benny Snell. We'll have to see what happens. Sure. He's fast. He has a good burst score. He has a terrible player comp of DeAndre Washington, in case you're worried about it. But I wanted them to draft a running back. I was kind of in on Anthony McFarland, and I was out, and then I was in, then I was out, and I was in, and now I don't know how I feel. But I think you could have an opportunity for Anthony McFarland to jump into that second role. And if he does, right?
Yeah.
And James Conner does what he's known for and gets hurt, you could see Anthony McFarland get the starting job, and I think they want to see what he looks like in that role. But we'll have to see.
What I've seen is they've actually talked about Anthony McFarland as like a specialty guy, where he's only gets used in like third down situations and is used in special teams. So okay. I don't know if there's going to be. No, I don't see it. I think the Steelers not taking a running back in the first 3 rounds. I know they didn't have a first round pick, but in the second and third round, I think it shows that they have a lot of faith in Conner when he is healthy. And the reason they took a running back here is just because he does get injured, and when he's injured, they have another body to try to throw out there. Yeah,
agreed. I wanted to look over before we end the show a couple of teams that we didn't talk about in this segment of the show. The Browns, Patriots, and Texans all didn't really take an offensive player.
No.
In the first 2 rounds, the Patriots took 2 tight ends, Devin Asiasi and Dalton Keene. They weren't on the show because
I don't think either of them's going to do anything.
I don't think with no quarterback there or with a younger quarterback there's not really going to be a great opportunity for either one of those guys. The Texans drafted a wide receiver in the 5th round by the name of Isaiah Coulter, but we're not going to talk about 5th round wide receivers.
They have too many wide receivers.
Wide receivers. The Browns drafted Harrison Bryant in round 4. And the Broncos drafted another tight end, Albert. Don't want to say your last name. Akwanga Gumba.
So he played with Drew Lock in college.
Okay, so yeah, interesting little competition there between Noah Fant and.
He'll probably be the number 2 tight end. Denver has pieces on that offense. And like I said, if Drew Lock is any good,
they drafted 3 wide receivers too with the Raiders in the AFC.
Yeah, and they have Melvin Gordon now as well, and it's going to be very interesting to see what Denver does. I also think, like you said, good news for the Steelers to not draft a running back until round 4. If you like James Conner, Miami obviously didn't draft a running back. We talked about that earlier. That's good news if you wanted Jordan Howard on your team. Right. I think the only bad news in the AFC was really the fact that Zach Moss got drafted and Devin Singletary is going to have to take a hike, I guess. I want Devin Singletary to work. We'll see how that plays out. Yeah, because I think there's a chance Zach Moss doesn't take half the reps. Yeah, there's a chance. But that one you have to just watch. That'll do it for part 1 of our draft recap. Sorry for it being so long, folks. There's a lot of players. A lot of draft. Once the draft episodes are over, we'll go back to our regularly scheduled content of 30-minute episodes, hopefully. Yes. Don't forget to check out our website, thefantasychampions.com. We'll follow you on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and we'll talk to you on Thursday, Fantasy Champs. Later.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.